Dr. Arnold O. Beckman, founder of Beckman Instruments Incorporated, created devices that revolutionized the study and understanding of chemistry and human biology. These are a few personal reflections of Dr. Beckman from friends and family.
One of Dad's favorite sayings is one of mine: don't take yourself too seriously.
In later life, in his 90s, when he was starting to lose his short-term memory, and one of those wonderful occasions when I was down at the house having lunch with him, he said, "Harry," he said, "you know, I'm losing my short-term memory, but don't worry, my long-term memory is just fine." He says, "For example, I can't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning." But then with that little twinkle in his eye that we've all known and loved, he said, "Don't worry," he says, "if you ask me in 2 weeks, I'll give you the full details."
When we walked on the airplane, it was kind of interesting. It shows the sort of the unassuming personality of Dr. Beckman. We walked through, of course, you walk through first class, and I thought, here are all these young businessmen thinking they're really on top of the world and hot shots, and we go through not knowing that this gentleman, before me walking through here, could not only buy the airplane, he could buy the whole airline. But he's back in coach.
Dad was a Boy Scout, and although Cullum did not have an official troop, the boys formed their own troop, called the Owl Patrol. If the group wanted to get together, Dad would go around to the other boys' houses and hoot like an owl at their window. Thus, Dad's name became Hoot.
Wondering where I'm going to go to dinner with him. In the meantime, I kind of looking in the kitchen. There's a kitchen there. The refrigerator is full of food and had all these frozen food there and so forth. And I said, well, we could either, I'd mentioned we'd go down to Georgetown to a restaurant or something, or, there is food here. He said, well, I'll be fine. So I prepared TV dinners. And we sat there and had TV dinners in the dining room of his apartment and had a great evening and talked about a lot of things from his days when he rode the railroad out to the west and worked in Ashton, Idaho, playing the piano for silent films and its fishing.
Mabel was a tremendous supporter of Arnold's all through the years. They were very, very close. They talked to each other about projects and so forth. And I always like to talk about my projects to Mabel and see if she thought they were reasonable as well, because they talked to each other a lot, and I felt that if my projects were okay with both Mabel and Arnold, they might have a chance of succeeding. But I want to tell you, they were a team all the way they were a team. I don't think he ever did anything without really talking it over with Mabel. And Mabel was so supportive. I mean, she came to all of the things at Caltech, all the science things that people think, well, that'd be so boring, so complicated. She always came. She was always supported. She'd always ask questions. I still to this day consider them the best team that Caltech has ever had. It was fantastic.
The three of us were driving back from reviewing an acquisition that had been made in New Hampshire. And it was a small scientific company housed in a 150-year-old mill building with water wheel, heavy wooden timbers, magnificent building. And we're driving back to the airport at Boston. And we drove out onto the freeway, and both of them were very quiet, and I certainly wasn't going to say a word. We were all thinking the same thing. And finally, she leaned over and she said, "Arnie, what did we buy?" And Dr. Beckman, in his characteristic good humor, waited what seemed like 10 minutes, but it was probably only 3 seconds, and reached over and touched me and said, "Jerry, would you please to explain to Mabel what we bought?"
Once, when I was about 13, I somehow managed to get away in Dad's 37-foot sloop by myself. As you can imagine, Dad was waiting at the dock when I finally made it back, thankfully in one piece. "Well," he said, with typical understatement, "I guess you really do know how to sail."
His father, George, was a blacksmith that you know in Cullum, Illinois. Arnold's childhood was right out of the storybooks. Fishing for catfish, dodging freight trains, sneaking out in the middle of the night, and exploring the woods with his friends. After 6 piano lessons, he was good enough to help support his family by playing along with the silent movies at the local theater.
He was always taking pictures of us as children and then developing that film down in our basement in Altadena, where he had a darkroom.
My father was among the most brilliant and successful men of his century. His passing last month warranted stories on the evening news and tributes from virtually every corner of the world. But to me, Arnold Orville Beckman's legacy was one word and simple: Dad.
The music of his teen years, the music you carry through your life, was the music of World War I, the patriotic music. He really did know and could sing. Over there, when Johnny comes marching home again, I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy, and it's a long way to Tipperary. In the 1920s, it became the music of the silent music that goes with silent movies. He really had City Lights, Charlie Chaplin, he had Rush music, he had serious music, but his love music was Let Me Call You Sweetheart, and we all knew who that sweetheart was.
He didn't read to me, that was Mom's domain. But he'd tell me bedtime stories about two imaginary little critters named Pee-wee and Goggle Eye. Their daily mishaps sounded mysteriously like my own. And the stories always included a gentle but well-placed moral.
He said, Michael, you have to follow Rule 7, which is don't take yourself too seriously. But he also has other rules. He has his Rule 1, which I believe is, integrity comes first, that everything has to be done with integrity. And his Rule 2, which is, I find it an interesting rule, it's don't embarrass yourself or others around you. And I find that to be an interesting rule to live by. And I asked him, I said, Arnold, you have 7 rules. You've only told me 1, 2, and 7. What happened, to 3 through 6? And he says, well, I'm still thinking about those.
Dad had his own rules to live by, as you've heard. One of them, drive as fast as you want, but do it inconspicuously.
He's a great believer in two-way communication, and I think the reason he is what he is because he's so questioning. He's also a lifelong pursuer of knowledge. He spoke about how important it is to have a scientifically literate population. So the only way we will be able to compete in an increasingly competitive global environment is to have as many people as possible scientifically literate. And he said the only way we could do that is to have teachers that not only know their material, but are excited about their material and present it in a dynamic way.
When I go to his home, I go to his house every Tuesday, and we pay bills and we talk and we go over what needs to be done. And every once in a while he'll look out, and he looks out over the ocean to Catalina, and he'll say, it looks like an awfully pretty sunset tonight, Lynn. Don't you think we should go enjoy the sunset?
It's impossible to think of Dad without remembering Mom and their 64-year relationship. I don't remember a single argument or harsh word between them my entire life. Calling to mind the saying that the greatest gift a man can give his children is to love their mother. Dad, thank you for that legacy, for that gift.